FIFA is facing growing backlash after announcing a major change to the World Cup final. Halftime is being extended from 15 minutes to 30, and many fans believe it's a decision that could hurt the biggest match in football. Let me break it down. Let's start with the number everybody's arguing about. 30 minutes. That's how long the break between the two halves of Sunday's World Cup final could last, according to broadcasters bracing for it right now. The BBC and ITV are bracing themselves for a 30-minute break to accommodate an 11-minute halftime show, along with their usual 15-minute mid-game analysis. To put that in perspective, the actual rulebook for football says halftime tops out at 15 minutes. IFAB, the International Football Association Board, has ruled that halftimes are to be a maximum of 15 minutes, and may be altered only with the referee's permission. 30 minutes isn't a small stretch of that number. It's double it. So who's actually performing during those 30 minutes? This isn't some marching band and a mascot. FIFA President Gianni Infantino made it clear that superstars like Madonna, Shakira, BTS, and Justin Bieber will headline the halftime show, joined by Burna Boy, Gustavo Dudamel, the PS22 Choir, Coldplay, and even characters from Sesame Street and the Muppets. That's not a halftime show. That's a festival lineup. Now the reaction from fans has been loud, and it's been fast. One fan summed up a feeling shared by a lot of people online, saying first, the game is broken into quarters. Now a pop show at the half too. The World Cup ain't the Super Bowl. It shouldn't be like this. Another put it more bluntly, calling the 30-minute break for a concert ridiculous, and arguing that the final should be about football, not another show designed to make more money. And plenty of the anger has landed directly on one man. Fans have been blaming FIFA President Gianni Infantino, with one writing, "I hate what America has done to football." Some have gone further than that, calling for consequences at the top of the organization, with one fan pushing for Infantino to lose his job entirely, and for FIFA's control of the game to be broken up. So that's the first voice in this. Fans on social media, furious in real time. But it's not just fans. Broadcasters who have paid enormous money for the rights to this match are nervous too. Reports say the controversy has TV rights holders on edge, with outlets like the BBC and ITV initially hesitant to air the show, preferring their usual halftime analysis. Think about that for a second. The people who are contractually obligated to broadcast this match to hundreds of millions of homes were considering skipping FIFA's own centerpiece show. Now let's bring in a football writer's take, because this is where the anger crystallizes into an actual argument. One widely shared piece of commentary put it plainly. Suddenly, it's a game divided into 4 quarters instead of 2 halves, with a half-hour Super Bowl-style interval sprung on fans for Sunday's final, as FIFA appears to be on a mission to Americanize football into soccer, to change it forever. That same writer didn't hold back on the rulebook question either, pointing out that FIFA has flagrantly ignored the laws of the game, which prohibit any interval lasting more than 15 minutes, doing so with no regard to the players or the fans or what the game means. Here's the thing that makes this different from just griping about a concert. This isn't the first time FIFA has pushed past the 15-minute line. The laws of the game prohibit any interval lasting more than 15 minutes, but FIFA already flouted that at last year's Club World Cup, with one that stretched to 25 minutes. So Sunday isn't a one-off. It's the second time in about a year FIFA has broken its own rule for a big stage. And this time it's doing it for the single biggest match in the sport. And the maths on the night itself gets a little wild once you add everything up. Between 2 3-minute hydration breaks in each half, a 30-minute interval, and the extra minutes referees typically add on for stoppages. One detailed breakdown estimated that an 8 p.m. kickoff, with 2 hydration breaks, a 30-minute halftime interval, and additional time in both halves would push the match past 10 p.m., with extra time and penalties potentially taking it beyond 11, 3 hours from the start, and getting close to how long an actual Super Bowl runs. So that's the shape of the story right out of the gate. A World Cup final that's supposed to be decided by 2 teams and 90 minutes of football is now wrapped around a production built for stadium screens, broadcast slots, and a guest list that reads like a Grammy after-party. Fans are furious about it, broadcasters are wary of it, and the man at the center of the decision, Gianni Infantino, isn't backing off it. But to understand why FIFA would risk this kind of backlash on its biggest night, you have to go back and look at how we actually got here. Because this halftime show didn't appear out of nowhere. It was tested piece by piece over the last 2 years. Every big swing FIFA takes usually has a smaller version that came before it, and this halftime show is no exception. To understand Sunday, you need to go back about 12 months, to a stadium that's actually hosting this very final. Last year, FIFA ran a test balloon at the Club World Cup final, held at the same MetLife Stadium, now rebranded as New York, New Jersey Stadium for this tournament. That night, halftime stretched to a 24-minute performance featuring Thames, J Balvin, and Doja Cat. Some reports round that up slightly, describing it as a 25-minute halftime break at last year's Club World Cup. Either way, it blew past the 15-minute limit by roughly 10 minutes. And the sky didn't fall. FIFA took note. That test run matters because it's the reason nobody at FIFA seems surprised by what's happening now. As one broadcast reporter covering the story put it, the entire build-up felt inevitable to Ben Church, who couldn't be less surprised by a Super Bowl-esque halftime show in the FIFA World Cup 2026 final. In other words, this wasn't a sudden decision. It was a plan that had already been rehearsed. But the Club World Cup wasn't even the first time a major FIFA-adjacent tournament stretched halftime for a concert. Go back 2 years earlier to Miami, and you'll find the blueprint. During the Copa America 2024 final, the sports lawmaking body IFAB had already rejected a 2021 proposal from the South American Confederation CONMEBOL to extend the maximum length of halftime to 25 minutes, citing the negative impact on player welfare and safety resulting from a longer period of inactivity. IFAB said no. CONMEBOL did it anyway. Despite the rejection, CONMEBOL staged a Shakira concert lasting that long during the 2024 Copa America final in Miami. That decision didn't go unanswered on the pitch either. It drew a direct complaint from someone who had to actually manage a team through it. Colombia's coach Néstor Lorenzo was critical when CONMEBOL extended halftime from a traditional 15 minutes to 25 minutes to accommodate Shakira's performance in the Copa America 2024 final. That's our second named voice in this story, a working international coach on record, unhappy about exactly the kind of interval FIFA is now building into the biggest match on the calendar. So you've got 3 data points stacking up in order. 2021, IFAB rejects a formal push to extend halftime on safety grounds. 2024, CONMEBOL does it anyway for a pop concert and a national team coach objects. 2025, FIFA runs its own quarter-hour-plus experiment at the Club World Cup final, in the very stadium hosting this year's final. 2026, FIFA takes the biggest stage of all, the World Cup final itself, and doubles the clock. There's a term that's been used to describe what's happening to the sport across all of these moments, and it comes up again and again in coverage of this halftime decision. Commentators keep calling it an Americanization of the game, or as one Canadian broadcast report phrased it, a kind of Yankification of the beautiful game. The idea being pushed by critics is that a sport built on 90 minutes of uninterrupted play is slowly being reshaped to look and feel like American sports, where the breaks are the show and the show is the business. Academic voices have weighed in on that idea too, and not always in the way you'd expect. A professor who teaches the history of the sport offered a more complicated read on the whole tradition argument. Traditions are likely to be held dear by some soccer fans, according to the University of Toronto's Paul Cohen, who noted that Las Vegas didn't have a hockey team when he was a kid but does now, raising the question of what tradition even means. Inside a closed, franchised, organized league ecosystem like the ones running professional sports in North America. In other words, sports change what counts as sacred all the time. The question is just whether football's fans are ready for that shift to hit their tournament. And it's worth remembering that FIFA didn't wait for full agreement before pulling the trigger. Right up until close to the final, uncertainty hung over broadcasters about exactly how long the break would run. According to The Guardian, World Cup television rights holders were growing increasingly frustrated by FIFA's silence on the length of the 2026 finals halftime, and FIFA did not respond to a request to confirm the length. That's a governing body making a call and letting its own broadcast partners find out through speculation and reporting rather than a straight announcement. Now here's where the story widens out from just halftime, because this whole tournament has been building toward this exact kind of moment for months. FIFA didn't just introduce concerts, it introduced a whole new in-game interruption that a lot of fans have never seen before at a World Cup, and it happened well before we ever got to the final. For the first time in tournament history, FIFA mandated 3-minute hydration breaks in each half for all 104 matches of the World Cup, during which broadcasters are permitted to show commercials. That's every single match, not just the final. And the mechanics of it are specific. The referee's whistle stops the game 22 minutes into each half to allow players to rehydrate. And after 3 minutes, a second whistle ends the break and play resumes. There's even a workaround built in for awkward timing, with tournament officials confirming that if there's an injury or ongoing stoppage, at the moment of the 20th or 21st minute, the referee can call for a slightly early drinks break. FIFA's official line on all of this has been consistent: player welfare. The federation framed the mandatory breaks as part of a focused attempt to ensure the best possible conditions for players, drawing upon the experiences of previous tournaments, including the recent FIFA Club World Cup. That's the same justification used for the extended halftime, heat, safety, player condition. But almost immediately, that explanation started running into trouble with the people watching from the stands. Fans didn't buy that these breaks were purely about hydration, and they let everyone know it in the stadium. Fans have made their feelings known by booing the breaks, drowned out by music. That's a strange scene to picture. Thousands of people jeering a break that's supposedly there to protect the players on the pitch they came to support. So by the time we get to the final, this isn't some isolated decision about one concert. It's the endpoint of a pattern that's been building through an entire tournament of hydration breaks. Add cutaways and now a halftime built like a festival stage. Which raises the obvious next question: who's actually performing and how much money is really riding on those 30 minutes? If you're going to break your own rulebook for a football match, you'd better bring a lineup that justifies it, and FIFA has. The names alone tell you this isn't a small production. Madonna, Shakira, and BTS will co-headline the historic FIFA World Cup 2026 final halftime show, taking place on Sunday, July 19, 2026 at New York, New Jersey Stadium. That's three of the biggest acts on the planet sharing one stage at halftime of a football match. Around them sits a supporting cast that reads even bigger once you added up Madonna, Shakira and Burna Boy, BTS, Justin Bieber, Gustavo Dudamel, and the PS22 chorus featuring Coldplay will perform, curated by Coldplay's Chris Martin. And the show itself only accounts for a fraction of the 30 minutes. The musical extravaganza will last exactly 11 minutes, but the entire halftime break will stretch to 30 minutes to allow for stage setup and teardown, plus plenty of time for TV networks to break down the first half. So roughly 2/3 of that half hour isn't even the concert. It's staging logistics and broadcast filler wrapped around an 11-minute set. Infantino himself has stood behind the lineup publicly, framing it as a moment of cultural reach rather than commercial excess. He's been quoted defending the decision by saying Madonna, Shakira, and BTS are international icons whose music crosses borders and generations, adding, "We're proud to welcome them to the first ever halftime show at a FIFA World Cup final." Notice the framing there. Not apology, not compromise, pride. Now here's a detail that changes the tone of the money conversation a bit, because it's not simply FIFA pocketing a windfall. There's a stated cause attached to this show, and it's a significant one. The event is meant to unite music, sport, and global action, to help raise support for the FIFA Global Citizen Education Fund, expanding opportunities for children worldwide. The scale of the ambition is specific. The fund is aiming to raise USD $100 million to provide access to quality education and football for children around the world. That fund isn't a vague gesture either. It's tied to a real 4-year partnership. The landmark initiative aims to inspire new commitments from philanthropies, businesses, and individuals, following the announcement of a 4-year partnership between FIFA and Global Citizen, made at the Global Citizen Festival in New York. And the money isn't just sitting in an account somewhere, it's supposed to move. Finances from the fund will be granted into grassroots programs in over 200 countries, with some allocated to the FIFA Football for Schools program, a FIFA and UNESCO-led initiative that advances life skills, learning, and community development through football. So there's a genuine split happening here between two different reads on the same 30 minutes. One read says this is a cash grab dressed up in a good cause. The other says the artists performing aren't even being paid for it, and the whole thing is designed to funnel attention toward a charitable fund most fans would otherwise never hear about. Reporting on the announcement noted that the social fund and unpaid artist participation are meant to balance things out and send a message of global responsibility. Even so, nobody's pretending commercial interest isn't part of the calculation too. Coverage of the decision was blunt about it. The commercial pressure is real, with the show aiming to draw new audiences and maximize revenue from broadcast rights, sponsorships, and ticket sales. Both things can be true at once. A genuine fundraising push and a genuine ratings play, stapled to the same 11 minutes of music. And it's not only the concert dragging in outside money. Remember those in-game hydration breaks from the group stage. They're a small advertising economy of their own. Broadcasters were given very specific windows to work with if they cut to commercial. They can only do so 20 seconds after the break begins and must return to the game 30 seconds before play resumes, giving broadcasters 2 minutes and 10 seconds to work with per half. 2 minutes and 10 seconds doesn't sound like much until you remember how much a World Cup final audience is worth. For scale, the Argentina versus France World Cup final in 2022 drew 1.42 billion viewers, dwarfing the audience generated by the Super Bowl. Ad inventory at that scale isn't a rounding error for anyone. Broadcasters, for their part, went from resistant to resigned pretty quickly once they did the math. Where the BBC and ITV had initially wanted to stick with their usual analysis instead of airing the concert, later reporting flipped that story. Outlets like the BBC and ITV were initially hesitant to air the show, preferring their usual halftime analysis. But recent reports say they'll include the spectacle after all, thanks to the longer break and commercial pressure. Read between the lines there, a 30-minute window gives broadcasters room to do both. Air some analysis, air some concert, sell some ads around all of it. Nobody has to choose. And this is where the show fits into a much bigger night than most fans probably realize. Halftime isn't the only new production squeezed around this final. FIFA's building an entire evening around the match itself. The kickoff will also be preceded by a closing ceremony starting 90 minutes earlier, and featuring the likes of Robbie Williams, Tom Cruise, and Nicole Scherzinger. Reports have since confirmed Cruise's involvement directly, noting FIFA announced that it added Tom Cruise to its closing ceremony. Add I show speed to that same closing ceremony bill, and you've got a night that stretches from a pre-match spectacle straight through to a post-first half concert before a ball's even kicked in the second period. FIFA's own marketing language leans hard into that scale, describing the whole event as a defining moment for the sport rather than a mere accessory to it. The Federation has been marketing this halftime show as a landmark moment in which the greatest show on earth reaches its pinnacle. So that's the ledger. 3 of music's biggest names, a $100 million fundraising target, unpaid performers, a broadcast deal built around commercial windows, and a closing ceremony stacked with Hollywood on top of it. It's a lot of production value wrapped around a single football match. But production value isn't the only cost anyone's counting. There's a much more physical price tag being raised too, and it's coming from the people who actually have to play through it. For everything FIFA has built into Sunday night, the stage, the lineup, the fund, there's one group whose interests keep getting cited to justify all of it, and that's the same group raising the loudest objections: the players. Start with the reasoning IFAB used back in 2021 when it turned down a shorter version of this exact idea. When CONMEBOL asked for halftime to stretch to 25 minutes, IFAB said no. And it said no for a specific reason: the negative impact on player welfare and safety resulting from a longer period of inactivity. That's the rulebook's own reasoning on record, against exactly the kind of break FIFA is now running for the final. Except FIFA's version is 5 minutes longer than the one that got rejected. The medical logic behind that objection is straightforward, and it keeps getting repeated by people close to the game. Sit a professional athlete down for 30 minutes after 45 minutes of full sprint effort, and their body starts to cool. Reporting on the decision flagged exactly that risk, noting experts warn that players risk muscle cooling and injuries if they're inactive for half an hour before the second half of the world's biggest match. Another breakdown of the concern put it in blunter terms, asking what happens to players who are hanging around for that long, questioning the effect on the possibility of injuries, especially muscular issues, and the need to keep warming up, arguing there's no consideration for player welfare and that it's not healthy for them to be inactive for so long. Now, we already met one coach who lived through a shorter version of exactly this scenario. Nestor Lorenzo watched his Colombia side play through a 25-minute Shakira-fueled interval at the Copa America final, and he wasn't quiet about not liking it. That's a manager who had to send his players back out cold, into extra time. After a half hour of watching a concert, instead of doing what teams normally do at the break, regroup, adjust, warm back up on their own schedule. But it's not just coaches raising the flag. Players inside this exact tournament have already gone public with frustration over FIFA's other big welfare-branded interruption, the hydration breaks. Liverpool and Netherlands defender Virgil van Dijk has been one of the most direct voices on this. He's been critical of the hydration breaks introduced at this summer's World Cup, criticizing their introduction after the Netherlands' 2-2 draw with Japan was broken down into 4 quarters at the air-conditioned AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. Note that detail: air-conditioned. Van Dijk's objection lands harder because that break happened in a stadium where the heat justification for stopping play didn't even apply. He's not alone in that read. Other players around the tournament have described real physical distress during matches this summer, which is exactly what FIFA points to when it defends these breaks in the first place. Argentina's Enzo Fernandez said he felt dizzy while playing in very dangerous temperatures during last summer's Club World Cup in the United States. Atletico Madrid's Marcos Llorente described the conditions in blunt terms too, saying he felt terribly hot and adding, "My toes were sore, my nails were hurting, it's incredible," after playing in a heavy defeat in Pasadena. So here's the tension sitting right in the middle of this whole halftime debate. FIFA's justification for breaking its own rules for both the in-game hydration stops and the extended final interval is player welfare. And yet the players and coaches closest to the situation keep describing the opposite experience. Not protection but disruption. Not relief but cooling down at the wrong moment. Standing around during the biggest game of their careers, instead of doing what teams have done at halftime for over a century. There's also a simpler, more cynical read on the hydration breaks that's gained traction among fans and commentators. And it comes from watching how those breaks are actually used once the whistle blows. One widely read breakdown didn't hedge on this at all, arguing the hydration breaks midway through each half are dressed-up advertising breaks. Make no bones about it, FIFA has hidden behind the need for player safety, but they've often taken place in the rain or in cool conditions and have been completely unnecessary. That same piece pointed out the effect those breaks have had on the actual flow of matches, noting that the pauses have altered the flow of games, changing momentum and fragmenting the contest. Glorified timeouts, but not for the sport, for the advertisers. And fans in the stadium have made their read on this pretty clear too, in the most direct way a crowd can, by booing. It's worth sitting with that for a second. FIFA frames these stoppages as care for the athletes, and the crowds who came to watch those athletes are jeering every time the whistle blows for one. There's a reason coaches have found a silver lining in these breaks even while criticizing them, and it says a lot about what these pauses have actually become in practice. Hydration breaks provide a window for coaches to gather their players and tweak their tactics. USMNT manager Mauricio Pochettino leaned into that hard, drawing attention during a pre-tournament match when he was seen gathering his players around a laptop in the dugout during a 3-minute break in a pre-tournament friendly against Senegal. So even the people using the break constructively are treating it less like a hydration stop and more like an American-style timeout, which is precisely the comparison critics have been making from the start. Put all of this together and the halftime debate stops being just about a concert. It becomes a question about who these interruptions are actually protecting. FIFA has framed every one of these changes, the drinks breaks, the stretched Club World Cup interval, and now the 30-minute final halftime, as decisions made with players in mind. But the loudest voices from inside the game, the ones actually standing on the pitch during those breaks, keep describing something closer to disruption than protection. Which brings us to Sunday itself, the night all of this was building toward, and the moment where every one of these tensions finally gets tested, in front of the biggest audience in the sport's history. So here's where all of it lands. Sunday, MetLife Stadium, now wearing its World Cup name. New York, New Jersey Stadium, hosting the match every one of these decisions has been building toward. The night is stacked from the very start. 90 minutes before kickoff, the closing ceremony opens, with Robbie Williams, Nicole Scherzinger, Tom Cruise, and IShowSpeed on site. Then the match itself, then at the break, the moment that's dominated headlines for weeks. Madonna, Shakira, and BTS sharing a stage with Justin Bieber, Burna Boy. Coldplay's Chris Martin directing, Gustavo Dudamel conducting, the PS22 choir, and Muppets characters woven through it, all inside a window that FIFA insists will run to 30 minutes even though the music itself only lasts 11. By the time this show actually happens, the arguments around it have mostly already been made. The fans who called it a pop show dressed up as a football tradition have said their piece. Van Dijk and Lorenzo have already put their objections on the record from inside the game itself. Broadcasters who once hesitated to even air the thing have already worked out how to profit from it instead. And FIFA, through Infantino, has already defended the lineup as a moment of global reach, rather than apologized for breaking its own rulebook. What's left is simply whether it delivers what FIFA promised, a spectacle big enough to justify blowing past IFAB's 15-minute limit not once, but for the second time in 2 tournaments. FIFA is betting that a stage built around Madonna, Shakira, and BTS, wrapped around a $100 million education fund, will be remembered as the moment football's biggest game learned to put on a show worthy of its audience. The 11 minutes of actual performance are brief. The consequences of the 30 minutes around them won't be. Because whatever happens on that stage, the two teams walking back out afterwards still have a World Cup to decide. Whichever way the match goes, whatever shape the second half takes. After half an hour of standing around watching some of the biggest names in music, one thing is already true. The halftime break didn't just get longer this year, it got bigger than most of the football played around it. And everyone from the fans in the stands to the players on the bench is going to remember exactly how that felt long after the final whistle. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content. Sources: World Cup final halftime doubled in FIFA rules breach, The Mirror. FIFA to break rules with 30-minute halftime show, Yahoo Sports. FIFA to break rules with 30-minute halftime show, AOL. World Cup 2026. FIFA sparks controversy over length of finals halftime show. FIFA plans 30-minute halftime show to rival Super Bowl, NZ Herald. FIFA World Cup 2026 final halftime show, Global Citizen. FIFA World Cup 2026 final halftime show and closing ceremony guide, Man of Many. Tom Cruise to join star-studded 2026 FIFA World Cup closing ceremony, ABC News. Final halftime show FIFA. FIFA extends World Cup final halftime to 25 minutes, Crypto Briefing. The World Cup finals first halftime show, CBC News. List of 2026 FIFA World Cup controversies, Wikipedia. Why are there hydration breaks at the 2026 World Cup? ESPN. Why the World Cup will have in-game ads for the first time midweek.